In this video, I'm going to use a simple analogy to give a basic explanation of what finance is all about. I didn't know anything about finance until I graduated from college and started studying it on my own just by reading a bunch of books. And I didn't know what the stock market was about. I didn't know why people, I knew it had something to do with money, but I didn't understand what the financial industry did for the world other than just moving money around. And after reading a bunch of books about finance, I finally had an epiphany about what finance actually does, what its role is in society. And what it does is, the financial industry is basically a giant computer that calculates what people should be spending their time on. So for example, if we were to take a very simple society, even if we were I like to use the example of a village or just you by yourself. Suppose you were on an island by yourself. You would have the question, how should I spend my time? Should I spend my time going to get more fruit from the tree, or should I spend my time going to get more fish from the ocean, or should I spend my time just relaxing? You have to make that decision for yourself if you're just living by yourself on an island. Once you get to the point of a village, you then have groups of people working together, and you have to start to, the chief of the village, or maybe just some random person in the village would start to think, should we get everybody together to work on a particular project? So for example, should we get everyone together to work on building a new hut that we can use to store some type of food? Or should we get everyone together to go on a hunt and we can all go hunting together? Someone has to make that decision, or the group has to make that decision. And there is some kind of process that people go through to make that decision. Well, modern society is just a scaled up version of the same issues that you deal with when you're living by yourself or when you're in a small community. And so with society as a whole, we have this question of what should people be working on? How should people be spending their time? And in the case of modern society, the way that plays out is that we have to decide what companies should be producing. And that is, in essence, the mechanism that the financial world uses to decide how people should be spending their time. What it does is, finance is about loaning money or moving money around, or allocating, the phrase they use is allocating capital, which basically just means, capital is just a term which refers to people's time or money or the equipment that is produced from people's time, and it's just allocating. It just means what should it be working on. And so the reason I say that finance is like a calculator is that if you're just by yourself living on an island, you do all of the thinking yourself about how you should spend your time. Once you get to the point of being in a small community, like a small village or a family, then you have people talking with each other to make that decision. And it starts to be a little bit more distributed. And then once you get to the point of society as a whole, you end up with very complicated systems that interact with each other in such a way as to produce a decision. So for example, if I'm just by myself, the decision that gets made is just a result of the stuff going on in my head. If I'm in a small group of people, the decision that gets made is a result of the interactions between those people in that group. At the level of society, the decision that gets made about what should be produced or what people should be spending their time on is the result of very complicated interactions between all of these many different actors in the market. So you have all of the different people investing in the stock market, and you have these pension fund managers and the hedge fund managers, and you have the CEOs of the companies, and you have the politicians get involved, and all of this information and all of these thoughts get put into this system, the financial system, and it all gets processed, and then you end up with these decisions. And the decisions manifest themselves as things like, when a pension fund buys the company of a stock, it's essentially voting that company is producing something that is of value to society. And what will end up happening is, suppose you are a pension fund manager or a venture capitalist and you bet on Google when it's just starting out. And you say, I think Google is producing something which is of value for society. What ends up happening is that if Google becomes successful, all of the other people in the financial system notice that, and they quickly have their opinions shifted, and then they start putting more money, which is basically just people's time, they start putting more of people's time in that same direction. And so that is the way that I think about finance now. It's just a giant calculator. The financial system is a giant calculator for deciding how should people spend their time. How can, in a way, it's really how can we make people happiest? That's what it ideally would be. There may be some imperfections in the system, but I do think that it does have a beneficial effect. And the reason I bring this up is because the connotations that finance has in society are not very good right now. It's just associated with greed and these movies that they come out with, and rightfully so. The people that work in the system, I don't think always understand the bigger picture. They're just kind of focused on their own interests. But I think that the way that it functions at the larger scale it should be, or it can be, a very beneficial process.